Welcome in, everyone. It's time for another episode of the Gibson Show, and today I am joined by one of the best analysts in all of esports. We're joined by Fresh. Fresh, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, mate. When you said all the best analysts in all of esports, I thought you was going to introduce Jess or somebody else was coming in. I thought you was pranking me, but yeah, no. Having a good day, mate. How are you?
Doing good. It's good to be here. We've been talking about recording this since I think last August, so it's about time we finally did it.
Yeah, I've been a busy man.
But hey, it gives us more to talk about because you've obviously got on to do even more things since then, so it should be a fun one today.
Yeah, I hope so. It's been a whirlwind few years, actually, to be fair. Not even just since August. Whirlwind few years.
Yeah, because the first time I remember ever coming across you was on a UCAN 2 broadcast years ago. And it's safe to say the Fresh that was on camera in UCAN about 2 years ago is not the same guy that we've got on broadcast today.
No. It's actually quite funny because a lot of the people, like, talent-wise that I know and speak to, Emmy said this to me before, it's been like, you've been on like a massive journey with talent because you've had to come out of your shell. I used to be quite an introverted person, very behind the screens, very like in person, I'd be very quiet, unassuming, not like social scenarios. And like talent work has just forced me to, be comfortable on camera, be comfortable speaking, be comfortable in front of people. So yeah, it's just completely changed me.
But I think it's for the good thing anyway, because it's a career you're working in as well that, let's be real, lots of people in the world would love to do, but not everybody gets the opportunity, so we may as well enjoy it while we can. So we'll kick it off. So the story of how Fresh became an esports analyst on broadcast is not a straightforward one, but I want to go back before you even got into working as an analyst for a team. When you grew up gaming, was gaming something you always wanted to work in? Like, was it always FPS games, or how did you get into that world?
Honestly, no. Gaming was just, like it is for many people. Gaming for me was just an escape and a chance to, my dad was big into gaming, my brother's big into gaming. So growing up, we just kind of gamed. I didn't live with my dad and my brother growing up. I lived separately. So whenever we'd see each other, that was a commonality between us. So we'd spend time gaming. Played a lot of the usual games, the FIFAs, the Call of Duties, Xbox. I was on Xbox, never played PlayStation. So kind of growing up with just gaming, it wasn't a career. It was just a hobby. It was something that I did to escape, that I did to spend time and enjoy myself. I'm not big on TV, not really big on movies, music, but gaming was the one for me that was always like the thing that I really focused on, played a lot of games. I never saw it as a career, but I think, a lot of people that kind of have it as a career now, especially of my age, a little bit, I'm getting on for 30 now. So, when I was growing up, gaming just wasn't a career for a lot of people, especially the esports side of it.
Well, look, you said you're getting on 30, but you're still about 10 years younger than Des, so like you're not too far behind. And then Siege is obviously a very, very in-depth game. And your background was in accountancy, you went into that sort of things. How did you get into Siege? Because to me, it's not a game that people kind of fall into. It's one that people get into from either knowing people who play the game already or come across it in the esports world.
So in terms of actually getting into Siege the game, one of my close friends played it, picked it up, tried it, and he said, give Siege a go. So I bought it I can't remember when I bought it. And I remember I got on it and I played the quick match casual, whatever it's called. It was called casual back then, right? Was the very first casual that I played was on plane, and I picked Twitch. And back then, Twitch drones couldn't jump. So I came in and I was like, why can't this drone jump? This game is so stupid. And I didn't play it for like 3 months, right? So I've had it like since release or whatever. And then I just didn't play the game for 3 months. And then one night I was just really bored. FIFA was pissing me off, whatever it was. And just started playing, never stopped playing it. I was just hooked, and because obviously the game is more complicated than an FPS. It's, it's a strategy game with FPS built into it. And I think that's what gets you, is the predicting what people are going to do, countering them, and everyone will say it, but Siege is like such a unique game. There is just no other game like Siege, no other FPS like Siege. And I was honestly hooked from there. And it filled, the game itself, I played a lot when I wasn't when I wasn't in a great place in life. So I spent a lot of time filling my time getting away from demons. Sorry to take this in like a dark cloud way. I spent a lot of those times playing Siege to get away from it all. And yeah, I suppose in the long run, it did me good.
I think, though, that's the thing about gaming, though. It is an escape for a lot of people. Everyone who's going through stuff, it's something you can do where once you put the headset on, everything else that's going on kind of vanishes for a few hours, and that's the joy of playing it casually. And then I think with Siege 2, it's not like FIFA where you win a game, you get that feeling, yep, I should have won that. You lose a game, you're like, oh, I should have won that. With Siege, you kind of get that feeling. There really is a joy and an anger when you win and lose games in Siege that you don't really get in other games.
Yeah, somehow with Siege, you can be angry when you win and happy when you lose. It's a weird game like that. It really is. It really is. But like I say, it's just so unique, and it keeps you. It sounds weird to play, but it does keep you really mentally in check as well. It keeps your brain alive because there's so many variables in Siege, just from operators to guns to sights to barrels to utility to sights that teams select. Like, there's so many variables that you've actually got to be constantly processing and figuring out. So one thing that, like, I don't think people talk about enough is actually how, like, it keeps your brain very active whilst you're playing as well.
Yeah, that's why late night games with jackers can go a little bit rough sometimes.
Yeah.
But you were working then, I believe you told me when we had this talk, you got into the accountancy world and you had your day job in analysis, and you kind of got into esports. And you told me you were kind of looking at what was going on from an analysis standpoint, and you were like, do you know what? I could make this sort of stuff for fun. How did you start making those spreadsheets and get into analysis?
So I took a job with a company who I kind of won't name, but I took a financial analysis job within pensions. Now, for anybody who doesn't know finance, that's boring, but even for finance, right? And my predecessor, the person who had the job before me, they somehow had convinced the company to believe that their job was worth 40 hours a week, right? And I come in and I'm like, I can do this job in about 20 hours a week. So then for the first 6 months, all I do, and as you know, a lot of, I would say, good people in any business should do, they should look to improve how they work and whatever else. So I improved the job and the processes, and I got the overall job that the company thought was 40 hours a week down to about 8 hours a week of actual time. Now, here's where it goes wrong, and this isn't the advice that I would give to people. What I should have done in the company is gone and said, hey, I've done all this. Can I take some more on? Looked for improvement, looked for, promotion, recognition, move to other jobs, whatever. I should have done that. What I did do, actually, was watch a load of Siege on YouTube, sat at my desk, because I had the desk right in the corner of the office where nobody could see my screen. So I sat and watched a load of YouTube of Pro League. I want to say it was like Pro League season 6, 7, 8, that kind of time. And at that point, I was like, right, well, I've got nothing else to do apart from watch YouTube. So actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some spreadsheets. And the crossover between finance and analysis for like teams or, the job I'm in now, there is a lot of numerical analysis you can do. Because at the end of the day, if you do financial analysis, you're doing analysis on numbers relating to the company, whatever they relate to. Whereas if you do Siege analysis, you're doing analysis on numbers that are, objective numbers that you pull out of a data set that you take from Siege, right? Which could be, entry kills, timings, whatever. So all I did was literally just start doing analysis on professional teams. So I picked Team Empire because for me, when I was watching all of the Pro League, Team Empire, they did the same thing over and over and over again. Very easy to predict. So what I did was I just started building some spreadsheets relating to Team Empire at the time. And then built them up and was just like, right, I'm going to predict what Empire are going to ban. I'm going to predict how Empire are going to play. This, that, and the other. And to be honest, I just carried on going through it. And then I thought, I could actually do this for teams. This could be quite fun. And it all just went from there. That was the start.
And looking at your Wikipedia, and it's something that made me laugh every time, was Sleepy. Your first team as an analyst was Sleepy. Tell us about that. So
Sleepy was Sleepy was probably it was my first experience in a team, right? Is that, I was interested in Pro League. And for me, all these teams and people were heroes. I didn't know many, if any of them at that point. So you've got people, that was like Kixon and Terro, obviously the casters at the time. I was obviously a big G2 fanboy, all that type of stuff. But basically, Kickstarter puts out a tweet and he goes, looking for an analyst because he's got this project team going on called Team Sleepy. So I message him, and at the time I message him essentially quite a message about how I was working in finance, but I felt that my skills were transferable. A very professional message because I was working, I was a qualified accountant, I was working in a professional outlook, and that's how I was. And I attached my portfolio, genuinely attached my portfolio of all of the Team Empire analysis that I'd done, all of the like fake analysis, if you will, fictional analysis, and sent it to him. At the same time, a couple of people that I knew within the community that were also reasonably large in terms of content creation or whatever else had also tagged me in that post and said, we think Fresh should be really good. And he literally replied, he was like, you're only getting this job because your message to me was so professional and you had a portfolio. So he pulled me into TeamSpeak that day, which was whatever it was, 14th of June 2019, according to Wikipedia. It was actually the 13th, to be fair. Wikipedia's got it wrong. I only remember because it was the day before my mum's birthday. Anyway, he pulled me into TeamSpeak. I didn't know what TeamSpeak was. And he gives me this TeamSpeak server. This is in like 2009. I didn't know what TeamSpeak was. And I'm like, how the fuck do I get into this TeamSpeak? Anyway, I get in and we end up chatting for about 4 or 5 hours. And Kix literally says to me, he's like, you could be a great analyst. He said, but you've not been involved in the comp side of the game. You don't know how the comp works to an extent as to be involved in it. He said, but lucky for you, I'll teach you. So over the next, few months, every single day in TeamSpeak for hours, literally hours. Like I took time off work to do it. I would spend hours just picking Kickstar's brain. And that's how things really got going in the team side.
It's incredible the impact that he's had at the game at every level. Like that, the fact that you can put a lot of where you are today onto the back of Kix as well, I think's another lasting thing of his legacy.
Yeah.
But from there, you moved to, you said you were a G2 fanboy, and G2 had just gone through that massive period of success that had just kind of ended.
Yes.
And somehow you get a chance to work with them. How did that opportunity arise? Because not a lot of people get to move to an org as big as G2 with as little experience in the scene as you had.
Yeah, so after Sleepy, now obviously with Sleepy, I'd made some good contacts. I'd made contacts with players, with teams, got speaking to actual professional teams, made those contacts from inside the professional game whilst I was at Sleepy, and Kix as well, obviously, was a big advocate for mine. In that period between Sleepy and G2, I spent some time in the UK tier 3 with Horace. And that was really important for me because one thing Kix said is he's like, look, you've come into this team with ex-Pro League players. You've got all these like Pro League standards. Go spend some time in tier 3. It's going to be so important for you to go down there. And that's not disrespectful to anybody in tier 3 at all. So I went and spent some time in tier 3. But then, I kind of knew that I was operating at a high level that could have been tier 1. And I did some freelance work for a couple of Pro League teams at the time with tournaments such as the, I want to say it was the Allied Minor, a couple of like small minor tournaments that was going on during the summer of 2019. And one of them wanted to pick me up as an analyst for the team, as a Pro League team. And basically all I did was I spoke to Shas because I developed quite a good relationship with Shas in the summer of 2019. And I said to Shas, I was like, Shas, look, I know I'm going to join one of your rivals. I was like, but I'll just put it bluntly here. I'm going to join one of your rivals. I don't know how much I should be paid because I don't know what the going salary is for a full-time analyst. You've got a full-time analyst in Sewer that I think, is good, and I would want to be on like a comparable pay. So can you give me an indication? And literally the message from Shas is like, don't join X, come join us instead. And I think it was just a case of I was available. Shas saw that I was good. And even though G2 didn't have they did have a need, but they didn't have a need for another analyst at that time. Shas obviously didn't want me to go to a rival and picked me up for G2 at that point, which was an absolute whirlwind because for me, like G2, like I say, I genuinely was a G2 fanboy. There's a picture of when the UK Prem LAN, sorry, where I'm just a fan, where like I'm a legit nobody that's just interested in Rainbow Six Esports. And I've got a picture with Shas and Pengu, and I got him to sign my jersey and everything. I've never posted that picture because I'm too scared to, but like that's how much of a G2 fanboy I was. Like I didn't care for any autographs, but G2 I wanted. So yeah, for me, that going into G2 was just an absolute whirlwind. And I was like, Jesus. I was still working another job for the first like 6 months I worked to G2 as well, which was really rough because like I'd do a 9 to 5 job. I'd finish at 9, get home, have some dinner, have some food, start G2 at 6 and work until the early hours of the morning. And then I would I genuinely for about 6 months of my life averaged like 4 hours sleep at the start, during G2. And then I went full time at the start of 2020 with G2.
It's kind of that scary thing because a lot of people don't realize that to make it full time in esports, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. You spoke about it. You had your day job. I know I'm in that same part of my life now where it feels like I'm working 20 plus hours a day to get to where you want. And that puts a lot of strain on not just yourself, but your personal life and relationships you're keep trying to keep up on the outside as well. During that during that time, how did you manage to balance all of that, or did you just not?
Badly. Badly is honestly the point. And I think especially when you've got, like now we're 3-4 years down the line, I've got friends and family that completely understand the job and completely understand the sacrifices that have to be made. But at the point in time where it's like, I'm going to be going all over the world and, I've got to spend every hour that I've got either working for finance or working for G2 or working in Siege. And then when I'm not working, I'm watching, other regions or whatever else. It was very hard for family and friends to understand. I would say I've lost some friends along the way. And actually, just again, I keep making things dark. I'm really sorry for this. I'm actually in the process of like recovering some of those friendships because friends at the time, didn't understand or whatever. I think fortunately, actually, as I went full-time in esports, coincided with COVID and everyone just being at home anyway. So I kind of got away with it with a lot of my friends and family where we couldn't see each other anyway. But yeah, it's definitely a struggle. And I think, it's true to actually any career or anything you want to do in life. If you want to be at the top or get to the top, you've got to sacrifice so much. But I think especially in professional sports or professional esports, you've got to go and you've got to be willing to sacrifice everything, I think, to go to the top. It's really, it's a difficult place. If you look at the talent for example, for desk analysts, right? It's EUL and NAL. There's 4 jobs in the entire world of English-speaking desk talent for Rainbow Six. So if you're competing for 4 jobs in the world, you've got to be able to sacrifice, or you've got to sacrifice everything. Now, I'm not saying you should sacrifice everything. That's a different story. Don't drop out of school and all that type of stuff. But yeah, it was definitely hard with friends and family. And it's only been kind of 2-3 years later when people have seen it much more in terms of the places that I've gone, the work I've done, and they realize, oh shit, that sacrifice probably was worth it.
I think it is, and I think my mantra is always, if you have a talent, that you should maximize it as much as you can, because at least then, if you do your best and you don't get where you want to go, you can say it wasn't on me. I did everything I could do to get to where I was. So I think, all the sacrifices you made to that point to get to where you are today were 100% worth it. But after that, then your G2 time was kind of coming to an end, and you picked up another role with Chaos. Talk us through the end of your time with G2 and then the spell that you had with Chaos.
So the end of G2 was a very weird time. So we'd just been to 6 Invitational 2020, where we'd gone with a sub. We went with Sir Boss instead of Cryan. Cryan got benched. And I think our expectations genuinely for that event as a team were way too high because it was the reigning champions, back-to-back champions G2. We were playing with a sub. Like, we actually did pretty okay that event, I would say. I would say we met our expectations, or should have met our expectations, but they were too high. Anyway, after that event, Fabian leaves, Citizen and Virtue come in, the G2 super team concept is all coming together, the boys are all moving to Berlin, and it's a real weird thing because COVID's happening at the same time. And G2 were, I'll be honest, the start of COVID, the lockdowns, everything else, it affected me in a pretty weird way. And with G2, I completely lost work ethic. And I've said this to Shas before, because Shas, me and Shas are very, very good friends now. And we talk all of the time. But Shas has said to me multiple times, he's like, I never should have dropped you from G2. But actually, my work ethic those last 2 months of G2 was absolutely abysmal. I was just completely coasting. And it was because I felt like I was on the outside looking in, because all of the rest of the G2 boys, Shas, Sua, the 5 players, they'd all moved to Berlin to be part of this like super team, be in the gaming house or the apartments with the gaming facility. And I was just kind of left doing a lot of stuff from the outside, not being able to have those physical face-to-face conversations that they were having. So I got a little bit alienated. My work ethic went basically to shit. I'm not afraid of talking about that. My work ethic was awful. I would have kicked me. And this is what I've said to Shaz. I've said, ever since you kicked me from G2, which was like, at the time, that was like the biggest and best job I could have ever wanted in esports. I don't know how I got from that to not giving a shit and deserve to be kicked. And it taught me a real lesson about work ethic. So, Shaz gets me in the team speak call and he's like, look, we're essentially kicking you. I can't remember what he said. And that happened. But one thing that I will say about the G2 organization, and, G2 organization will always hold a really special place in my heart regardless. Those guys at G2, they said, like, we only need to give you a month. But we will give you as long as you need. We'll carry on paying you. I think they said 3 months, maybe 4 months. I can't remember what it was. Basically, they gave me an end date. They were like, find a job by this day. If you find a job sooner, you can leave. If you don't, we'll carry on paying you. I think I ended up leaving in May. I think they gave me till the end of July. Because the world was obviously going to shit with COVID. Everything was going wrong. And then I was losing my job. Was like, the organization were really good. They were like, look, we understand you're losing your job, so we're going to take care of you as much as we can kind of financially push it if you're not doing any work. So that was really good. And that'll always be, for me, special from the G2 org to be able to do that. And then Chaos came about. So, Chaos were obviously looking for a analyst because Hyperino was replacing Cyrad as he was the analyst he was going to coach. And Chaos were obviously looking to improve themselves from the previous year. I think it was Pro League season 11, the one before 2020. I think it was. And Chaos were always this like journeyman team. They were always there, never got relegated. Well, until I came along. They never got relegated, but they were never great. And they were trying to make improvements, right? So part of that was in the coaching structure and part of that was in the IGL role. So at the same time I went in under Hyperino, Crine came in to replace Secretly. With Red Groove moving to IGL for stage 1 that year. So yeah, things got into Chaos. Things were good. The boys were, great laugh. It was good spending time with them, particularly Shate as well. Teaming with Shate was unreal. Anybody who's teamed with Shate will say he's one of the funniest people ever. And honestly, he made going to work every day so fun. And yeah, Chaos kind of came and went. We drew too many games. We made some really bad decisions. In terms of recruitment of players, decisions about IGLs and the rest of it. And yeah, we got relegated.
But look, you learned something from it. If that didn't happen, you mightn't be where you are today. So it's something you got to look at. And that's the point then when you started to move into broadcasting and you did go into UKIN 2. And the weird, wild world of T3.5, T4, whatever you want to call UKIN 2. How different did you find that? Because I'll be the first to say it. I found you so shy on camera at the very start. How
it was, right?
Yeah. How did you find UKIN 2 and kind of what lessons did you learn about yourself there?
So the thing is I got the UKIN 2 opportunity from John Blaney, who worked at Ubisoft at the time, doesn't work there anymore, works for PlayStation. But he basically said, like, look, you're very well regarded in the community. You've got a lot of knowledge, and we're looking to bring analysts and we're looking to bring casters through. It was caster first and foremost. And he said, but we can't teach broadcast talent the intricate game knowledge you've got. You've just got that. But we can teach you how to be on camera. We're not expecting you to be good. And actually, I didn't even start in UKIN 2. My debut was a UKIN semi-final, the one that would qualify to what would have been a LAN, but it got cancelled. Where I came in as an analyst, I did some analysis basically for those games. And then after that, John was like, yeah, you are terrible on camera. And he literally said this. He's like, we did the voice call. He's like, Jack, you're terrible on camera. You're awful. We need to learn. We need to teach you that. You need to get better at it. But we're going to put you in UKIN 2 to do that. He said, do a season in UKIN 2, then we'll bring you back up into UKIN and we'll go from there. And that's pretty much what I did. I got after that, did UKIN 2. I got advice from basically all the talent that I already knew from when I was in Tier 1 anyway. So I'm reaching out to all those, Desertu's giving me bloody PowerPoint presentations about how to change the pitch of my voice and that type of stuff and reviewing stuff with, and those guys were really good. Like they reviewed stuff with me. They basically helped me just improve the on-camera presence side of things. And yeah, we went from there.
you kind of go saying you went from there is a bit of an understatement. Your career like rocketed from that point on. And then you got your kind of chance to work at EUL, and you worked a couple of major events, and you were working with Jess at that point, who went on, as we all know, she won the Esports Awards Analyst of the Year for last year. But I think Jess, when you look at the way she acts on TV or on broadcast, she's always going to be 100% about what she says is correct, which I think when you are on broadcast, you have to be very, come across as what you believe, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What did you learn from working with Jess? Because obviously it would have been a very, formative time in your career as an analyst on broadcast.
Even Jess taught me a lot about being on camera, to be fair. Is obviously what you see on the camera is supposed to be the finished product, right? But Jess would, especially the first few weeks when I went into EUL, she would be like, look, you're standing wrong, you're swaying too much, you're doing this, you're not looking at the camera, whatever else it was. And Jess, anybody who knows Jess knows that she's an extremely honest person. It's black and white with Jess. There's no gray. You know where you are. And, that if Jess is pissed off with you, she'll tell you. If Jess thinks you need to improve, she'll tell you. It's, it's a blessing and a curse, I think, for Jess. But for me, where I have absolutely no ego, I'm like, look, I need to improve. I need to get better at this. Jess was just being like, look, you're doing this wrong. I remember doing a telestration, and I'm thinking it's the best bloody telestration since sliced bread. And I'm like, Jess, I want to practice my telestration on you. This is so good. I'm so excited. And I'm doing it. And then she stood there and she's like watching it as the camera, and she's got her arms crossed. And she just goes, that's shit. And I was like, okay. Right, how can I make it better? And she's like, right, make it shorter, do this, gives me the feedback. So, Jess was really good. And, for all she can be a little bit hard work or tricky to work with at times, which, she knows she can. But she taught me so much about being on the broadcast talent. Like, there's certain people in your life where you won't be where you are without them and without them helping you. Jess is particularly EUL Stage 3 2021 when I came in. Her and Milos helped me so much. It was incredible.
Yeah, and I think you did go on from that point. I think everybody saw the improvements. And then obviously Jess left the scene. She went to move work in Valorant, and you became the guy. When it came to EUL, you were the guy, the analyst on desk. And they were trying to find the person for you to work with. And lo and behold, as life always goes full circle, in comes Fabian once more to work with you.
Can't get away from him, can I?
And I think, I don't know why it worked, but it did. Because, you guys, the way you go on are very different on broadcast. Fabian's not afraid to say the first thing that comes to his mind at any point. What was it like living in Paris, working with Fabian?
I mean, look, Fabian is unapologetically Fabian. And that was the case for when he was a player, when he was a talent, and now when he's a coach. And, I loved working with Fabian when he was a player. Like, I've got some hilarious stories about Fabian for when I was working with him on G2. But basically, it was natural is the best way to describe it. The transition phase from going, and by the way, this all happened on my birthday, right? So this kind of stage one, had we done stage one of 20? No, it was stage one of 2022 that we were coming into, right? And I'm in Tenerife on my birthday, and I get a voice note. So this is how it all happens, right? Is I get a voice note from Jess, and she's like, "Oh, I've been to Paris. Me and you have to have agreed. It's mutual. I'm not going to do EUL this year. I'm off to go do Valorant." And I was like, right, okay. So where does this leave me? And about 3 hours later, in the meantime, that day I was negotiating my EUL contract with, the company that handles EUL, the same day on my birthday in Tenerife. And then about 3 hours later, Ubisoft go, "Oh, by the way, Fabian's joining you for stage one." And I'm like, right. And it was supposed to be on the 7th of March. So it was like 4 days later, right, we're just going to have to go with this, see what happens. In the end, obviously the war delayed stage one. So we got a little bit more time to figure it all out. But, Fabian coming out was absolutely natural in terms of him coming out to Paris and being on the desk, because he says what he sees, and he has that obviously knowledge from, winning Invitational twice, right? He's like, nobody can ever question that. But he's also got a very funny attitude and a very funny persona that I could play off of very well. So with Fabian, I kind of naturally sat into the kind of stats guide, more of the serious talking, the more of like, even, I'm not afraid to go in when I'm on the desk, but when Fabian's going in, I had to play good cop at times as well. So it was very natural, but he did challenge me at the same time on the desk. But yeah, I thought our duo on the desk was really good. I'll be honest, I was very sad to see Fabian leave.
But you always kind of got the feeling with Fabian that if he got the opportunity to go back into G2, he was 100% going to take it.
It was written into his contract. It wasn't even just G2. It was written into his contract from day dot. If I get any opportunity to be a player or a coach, I'm going. Which is, again, like, in the world of esports, people can be very snaky, can be very deceptive, out for themselves, but not tell you, make out like the friends, whatever. Fabian, he will wear his heart on his sleeve and he says it how it is. He said, I will come and work talent, but I'm going if I get a player or a coach. So we knew at some point he would probably be leaving. The timing of him leaving and, him going to G2, and that was very sprung upon us. But yeah, we knew he was going to be going at some point.
And then that kind of brought us to the most recent stage that you worked, where because Fabian left, we were in this transitional period. So there wasn't really, I think, a natural successor ready to step up to work on the desk with you. So you got the opportunity to work with some people who had worked Challenger League, people that you know very well. Obviously you'd known Ollie and Demo in the past, you'd known Anne. What was it like working with those guys and, having them come on and join? Because fresh faces and, fresh attitudes can lead to having a lot of fun as well.
So Ollie and Demo was really good because, obviously I'd gotten my chance mainly broadcast talent work in UKIN with them, and then skipped a couple of levels because I've not. Demo reminds me of this all the time. I've never worked Challenger League because I never was in it as an analyst for a team, and I've never been in it as a broadcast talent. I just skip it. I'm tier 3 or tier 1. That's me. So I'd kind of skipped the level above them, and both of them, in my opinion, Ollie and Demo, were a very strong broadcast talent and have been waiting in the wings a long time to get into tier 1 in terms of the broadcast talent side. So for stage 3 this year, it was really nice last year, sorry. It was really nice to bring them in. I think in their heart of hearts, I think both of them would really want to be casters. However, coming on the desk for them, they got a sustained period of time out in Paris at the studio, and they were both really good on the desk. And, I'd work with either of them in a heartbeat if it didn't split their duo up, because they've got a good thing going with their duo as well. So, and then we brought Anne out. Now, Anne was somebody that was identified. Obviously, she worked 6 Invitational 2022 as an analyst, where she got some very late notice to go there. And since then, Anne was identified quite early on as somebody that people thought would be good on the desk, but was slightly inexperienced. So, she'd done Challenger League, and they were going to see how she did Challenger League 2022, and then maybe make a call for 2023. That was kind of the pipeline in the conversation, was kind of like, Fabian will probably have a year and then leave for 2023 after RSI 2023, and then maybe Anne could come in and replace him then. That was kind of the initial pipeline and talks that was going on. Obviously, Fabian expedited that. But Anne got a call to stage 3, and she came out and she bloody smashed it. So, she did really well on the desk. And again, I talk about feeling natural. Desking with Anne felt very natural, with given how prepared she is. There was a couple of times during stage 3, and I said this to her behind the scenes, there was a couple of times in stage 3 where I was like, I think she's prepared map bans better than me. And I consider myself the map bans guy. And I was like, shit, Milos is going to have to start giving map bans. Like, we're going to have to take joint custody of talking about that, because Anne prepares it so well. And then obviously, Anne did the major, did the finals, the EUL finals as well.
I think she does definitely bring like a real bubbliness and like fun to the broadcast as well, which is something I think EUL does very well anyway. With Ace, Dez, Emmy, Hap, Milosh, Ian Chambers when he's there, the vibes in EUL always look like they're really high. But there is another side to it too. And as glamorous as the job is, you get to live and work in Paris, you get to travel around the world. At the same time, you do have to kind of live out of a suitcase. You're living in a hotel as opposed to living in an apartment. How difficult is that? Because, you had 50 plus flights last year. You're living out of your suitcase all the time. You're living in a hotel room, which isn't really an apartment, so you don't have separate spaces to do your thing. What challenge that bring?
one of the biggest challenges is I bought a house in November 2021, and I still feel, what is it, January 2023? I still feel like a stranger in that house. I don't know where things are. I don't have toiletries in the bathroom, for example, because I'm never here. It's just a toiletries bag like you would have in a hotel. And I think that is challenging enough. Being homesick, being away from friends and family, like I said, is like the commitments that you've got to make to being in this lifestyle means that you will miss friends' weddings, means that you'll miss birthdays of families and all that type of stuff. Follow a sports team, you probably can't go watch them. That type of stuff, it does affect you. It really does affect you. And I know that people get homesick, and, talk to any talent at any point has had this kind of experience where they're just like, I just want a normal life, because, I've got to miss my mom's birthday again for the third year in a row. Whatever else, Christmas, I can't go to this Christmas party because I'm out for EUL finals. It does affect you. And then obviously you're living out in Paris, or you're living anywhere, wherever you go, because obviously, the NAL guys did it in LA. And I'm sure it'll change with Blast coming in as well, wherever we go, I don't know. But it's difficult living in a hotel room as well. For me, I would prefer if it was a massive gaming house or an Airbnb or something like that, where you get a bit more social. But one thing that I will say is a lot of the EUL team are really good at doing social type of activities. ME does, or tried to do, every Sunday, where we do a movie night the day before EUL, because of the people that fly in and out, or try to fly in and out, they'd get back on a Sunday regardless. So we do a movie night every single Sunday before EUL. We'd go out for food, we'd go out for drinks. I know that Easy and Des and Emmy and that, they would go for coffee some mornings as well. They had a little coffee club going on. So we still kept the social side of it good, but it definitely can take its toll. I know that, I'm sorry to make it dark again, Gibson, but when Jacob did his behind the scenes video on YouTube about what his commute was like and what NAL kind of did to his life in terms of the disruption, it is like that for everybody. As glamorous as it is, and it is great to travel the world and talk about Siege, don't get me wrong, absolutely love it, but there are downsides that I guess people don't necessarily realize.
But I think when you look at it, the pros will always outweigh the cons. You don't know how long you're going to be in this industry for, so you got to enjoy the little things. And speaking of enjoying the little things, this isn't necessarily a little thing, but one of my favorite ever moments of you, and I want to get your insight on this, was Berlin during the final. Whenever Rogue, the very, very last round, vaulting up on the table, getting the last kill. I remember looking and seeing you fall to your knees at the side of the stage, because obviously the guys, you're good friends with Tristan, you've known Leon. What was that moment like for you? Because that was joy.
There's a lot of people who said it was quite embarrassing. I think for me, it was just pure joy. It was the emotion of the whole thing. Now, in my job, I'm not allowed to be biased. I shouldn't be biased. But I wasn't working the desk for one, so I was kind of done. But for me, it was, I'd have been obviously very happy I had phase one. But for Rogue, and like you say, it was more to do with the fact that Tristan's one of my best friends. And, Tristan, we've worked events with Tristan as well. For me, I was kind of so proud of him, if that makes sense, because Tristan's journey, and, I knew Tristan, when I said I went and spent time in UK Tier 3, that was with a team on Tristan. So it was on a team with Tristan, sorry. So I'd known Tristan for the longest, not the longest time, but a very long time. And I'd gotten him into Delta Project with Fabian. I don't feel responsible for bringing him into Rogue, but I recommended him to both Rogue and G2 when he was available as an analyst, and they were both looking for one. When I messaged, my literal message to Meepy is I know you don't want shit, so I won't recommend shit. Get Tristan, because he'll be the best analyst you'll ever get. And then they go and win a major, right? So for me, I was just so proud of Tristan, because of, our friendship. And that kind of all just exploded at the time that the Berlin major and they won. And I was honestly, it mattered more because it was my friends. And yeah, that was it was a very special moment.
I obviously was friends with Tristan at that point too, but not to the same extent as you, as I didn't have the relationship for as long. But even for the likes of me and Whippet in the crowd who'd got to work Gamers 8 with him, it did feel really good seeing someone that you'd class as a friend succeed. You know, it's something that you'll never kind of forget. But I want to step away from your career for just a little bit now, and let's talk about this weekend. So we have the EU Last Chance Qualifiers coming up, and you spoke earlier, Team Empire. You said you'd done all the work on that old team. Well, they're back. They're living under outsiders now. Probably, has their style of play changed since then? I don't know. Some people say it has. Some people said it hasn't. We've got Navi, who have 3 players who were playing inside of the T3, Tier 4 system at the start of the year, and they have now got to this position. Team Secret, who are coached by, obviously, Marlon, who we got the chance to work with at Gamers 8 as well. And then finally, the underdogs, Makers, who are the, more SI experienced than half the players that are actually going to play this weekend. How excited are you for this weekend, and what are you kind of expecting from these teams?
This weekend is probably, let's not forget, it's going to be the last ever Last Chance Qualifiers for Six Invitational. So this is, probably going to be one of the most memorable weekends of Siege in a while, not because of the actual Siege played, but because of the teams involved, the players involved, the people involved, and the fact it's the last ever one. Europe as a region has obviously done remarkably well to get 6 teams into Six Invitational with points, which means that the lower end of our table, and Navi, Secret, Outsiders, we're at the lower end of the table more often than not during the year. So those boys have now got a massive, massive opportunity to make Six Invitational. And those are teams that we wouldn't normally see in these quals. Like, if we're going to be there, maybe 1, maybe 2 of them, But normally, if you look at SI 2022 quals, like G2 had to play them. I think Kavana at that point were playing them. Some of the top teams in Europe were having to play them. If you look at NA, SSG, TSM had to play the quals. For Europe, we've got like the lower end of our tier 1 and then tier 2 teams playing them. So it's kind of like, it's a great opportunity. I think as a quick summary of the teams, I think Outsiders, I'm hearing very conflicting things from people in terms of scrims about them. Some people are saying, my God, these guys are unreal. And some people are saying, my God, these guys haven't changed. And I think realistically, Outsiders' problem is going to be the same problem we've always had, which is if a team can play disciplined enough against them, then Outsiders are going to be too rigid to beat it. And it all depends. The win condition is all about the other team. I think for Navi's transfers have impressed me a lot. I think bringing Jegs in frees up Skiddy to do so much damage in that kind of lurk opportunity spotting role. And I think Navi have now got 3.5 really good fraggers and a solid backline. So it's kind of like I'm expecting big things from Navi. Whether they get to SI, I don't know. But if you look at the I guess goals they would set themselves and the experience that they need, there's only Kayak on Navi that's actually been to an international LAN event, right? So if they make SI, even if they get grouped, that's only a good thing for those boys. And I say it, people who see me on EUL will be bored of me saying that as a long-term view, Navi is like unreal. And then you've got, who else? Secret, again, kind of follows that category. They've been bottom of the table for God knows how long. When they relegated us in 2020, it was only because they were, slightly above us in the table, 1 place above us. And then they spent 2021 bottom of the table, 2022 bottom of the table. Like, the fact that those boys are out having a boot camp and Twister's been able to have a decent amount of time with them now, if they make SI, only going to be good things. I don't think they do well if they make it SI, but it's only going to be good things. And then Makers is a very, I would say, unknown quantity. I don't know if I would say unknown quantity, actually, but, they've obviously been to SI before, the core of them, but, they've got Dora and Sorry in now. And I think with Makers, I think what we saw through CL and CL quals, and even these quals for their SI, is that they can be a little bit erratic. They can either look like the best team on the planet or they can look very beatable. And I think there's no in between. So it's about which Makers turns up. So there's a whole range of questions with every single team. And one of these teams, I think maybe apart from Outsiders, you could pin it on them being really good for experience should they make it.
Should even look at Makers and CL when it came to that game against 10 Star. They got beat. They just about got over J-Lings. And then all of a sudden in the open qualifiers, they whitewash everybody almost ahead of them. So you don't know what to expect. I want to talk about Navi for a second because I remember watching one of your streams back in stage 1. It was either late stage 1 or early stage 2. And the conversation had moved to Skitty. And Skitty had only played Yukon 2. You know, he'd just come out of Yukon 2 for the M&M Academy roster. And he made the jump straight up into Tier 1. And you were talking about how great of a pickup that was, because a lot of teams weren't really looking at that level for the next player up. Then they go... Go ahead.
No, go on. It's fine.
Then they go and pick up Leader, the very next stage, who, you know, you and I both agree, at his role, he is probably the best in Europe right now.
Yep.
And then you go and get Jegs, who mechanically I think is up there with the top 3-4 players in Europe. But there's question marks over some other things about Jegs. But he's got Leader, who he's played with before. Skitty's been at that level. The Navi recruitment, they have delved into Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 2 more than any other team. And as someone who's so involved in that scene as you are, it gives you a lot of confidence, doesn't it, for what they could maybe do going forward?
It gives you a lot of confidence, I think, in Kayak. Because if you look at, you know, who's been replaced, who's the consistent on that roster now, it's got to be Kayak, right? Like, especially now Nafe's gone. I suppose you could maybe argue Nafe as well. But, like, for those boys to take, you know, unproven talents into Tier 1 and let them shine, you know, Kayak's not going to have good stats. He never will with the role he's playing. And, you know, you could argue that he's not as strong as a fragger as other players in a support role, for example. And you can make that argument. But look at how well he's transitioned these Tier 3 players into Tier 1. It's incredible. And that's why I've got so much faith in the Navi project, because those boys are only going to get better and better with experience. And, you know, with Skitty, I said on the stream when they picked him up and nobody knew who Skitty was, is like Skitty, and this is no disrespect to any former teammates of Skitty's in Tier 3, but Skitty had never teamed with great players that were going to enable him, that were going to put him in that spotlight. And he was always good enough. He was literally that diamond in the rough, right? And, you know, Navi taking a chance excited me. Very similar story with Leader was like, I'm sure Leader will have had trials with other Tier 1, Tier 2 teams, or maybe not have had trials, but there's a lot of teams, genuinely a lot of teams in Europe are crying out for a player like Leader, who can clutch up, who can play the backline, but can clutch up, can frag, and he's just consistent and provides you that consistent basis. So yeah, and you know, Jegs, I mean, I wouldn't say Jegs is not spoken about because he's a very hot topic in Europe and about going into Tier 1, but you know, those boys, that as a long-term project, it really excites me. You know, I'm hoping in a year's time we can go back and be like, yeah, Navi, they've qualified for SI points. They're looking good. They're looking deadly going into it.
And then you look across Tier 2 and Tier 3, there's still, you know, obviously we're still waiting on some moves to be confirmed. You know, there's rumors that some players are going to Tier 1 sides. But you look at the names inside of Tier 3 who you probably think deserve a chance as well. You know, obviously Lolo at Makers is an incredibly good player. You've got players like Oscar playing in the UK, who's, I think, a very, very talented young player. And not even that, you've got Deadshot, you know, one of EFAC's best friends in the scene. There's a guy, his name's left my head, but he's one of the French guys.
There's a few of them.
Oh, the guy from Portugal as well. Swaz, another fantastic player, as is Shukri.
Yep.
When do you think these players finally start getting their chance? Because they're very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, shall I be a little bit controversial?
Fresh, when are you ever not?
Look, I think that EUL is pretty blessed with fraggers, right? I think, you know, we've got a lot of very exciting frontline players, lag players, that type of stuff. The one thing that EUL, I think, teams are crying out for is that good second support. You know, that leader, that deeper. Like, if you name some unreal second spots, like, you know, leader, Deepak for me, those type of guys, if there was players of a really high caliber in that role coming through, they would shoot straight into EUL. I think a lot of those guys that you mentioned are kind of pure out and out fraggers. If a couple of those reinvented themselves, and obviously I know, for example, Lolo, you know, English, it's going to be quite hard for him getting into any kind of roster that's, you know, English speaking, until, you know, he has good enough English. But, you know, if there's no barriers that are language, I think it's mainly a role barrier, because there are so many good fraggers, but there are not a ton of really good support players out there. And you don't have to be an IGL, but like, for example, Deepak's not an IGL, Leader's not necessarily the IGL, right? You don't have to be the absolute caller of stuff. You just have to be the one that's enabling people, but then also being reliable when you need to be reliable. And I think if those boys kind of reinvent the roles, can get themselves into a EUL. But also with, you know, we don't know enough about the new system yet. but there's no reason why a strong tier 2, if there is a strong tier 2 underneath EUL, that can't be the kind of pinnacle. Because it'll still give you the opportunities to the international events, etc. But like we were saying right at the start with the talent, there are only 50 playing spots in EUL. There is always going to be someone good enough that misses out if there are more than 50 good enough players, right? So yeah, it's one of those things.
And now it's not even a case of 50 spots in EU. As you see now with the Citizen transfer and a couple of other players going to NA, Siege has become more global as people able to make the move. The Citizen transfer, do you think that's a net positive for all parties involved? Because, G2 pick up Benja, who's an incredibly good player. Sonics are getting Citizen out there, who they think is going to be a massive piece of their puzzle. They think that he's the piece that's going to turn them into proper contenders. Do you think anybody lost in that transfer, or do you think it's kind of net positive for everybody?
The people who lost in that particular transfer of Citizen going to Sonics was actually Heroic. So let's go through the parties, right? You've got Sonics, who you could argue didn't need to make a change. But when a player, and I think Super said this, when a player of Citizen's caliber is available and you think you can make him better, you take him. So Sonics have got themselves a world-class player, a like-for-like upgrade, and that team was already on an unreal trajectory arc. People might say, oh, but, there's not support players, whatever. Whatever the criticisms are, oh, but there's 2 lurkers now. If it's a like-for-like, then Citizen's going to be absolutely fine. And for Sonics, the improvement in Gunnar particularly is what's going to be important for Sonics, because Gunnar in that backline role had been putting up numbers, into the major I'm talking about, not necessarily in stage 3. He'd been putting up numbers and been really effective. So for Sonics, I'm really excited for Sonics. For Citizen, he's been in 2 or 3 different G2 super teams, and he's had to carry them on his back. Let's be completely blunt. Now, obviously, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that won't be said or never will be said. But for Citizen, I think that he feels that going to Sonics will be a team that can match his ambition to be a champion, to be a top player, to be a top team. So for him, it's a new lease of life into him as a player, because there's only so many times you can continue hitting your head against the wall with the same project. So for him, it's a change of scenery. It's a whole new constant, a whole new league, but a team that he feels that he can progress with. For G2, kind of the same story. They probably needed a change with Citizen going out, but they've brought Benja in, who, by the way, when you get rid of a top 5 player in the world, unless you get another top 5 player in the world, it's a lack of ambition, right? I think G2 have got a like-for-like, if not better player. If that's, there's still going to be a whole load of questions around the G2 and how that actually works and what's going on, because they've not looked so hot, and the roles and the players that are involved in it. But in terms of the like-for-like upgrade and the transfer, I think G2 have done well out of that as well. And then comes Heroic, right? Benja's obviously done well out of that because he's joining a massive org and a good team, and a team that, when G2 get through their ceiling, it'll be that team will be unreal. I've got so much faith if G2 figure their shit out that they will be unstoppable. But I'll leave that to them. I did tell them that, but whatever. But then, I think for Heroic, I don't know what they've done. I really don't know what they've done, because Benja, in my opinion, is a star player in the league, in the world, never mind just in Heroic. So for them to, whatever happened, for them to let him go, now I don't know who they'll get in, at this point it's unannounced, so we can't really talk about it, but to let the star player go to a rival, because let's not remember G2 and Heroic are kind of tussling to be getting into that third, fourth spot. So to let him go to a rival, I don't get it. I don't get it. And so I think, everybody in that whole transfer kind of ladder has won, apart from Heroic, who let their best player go to a rival.
Heroic confused me, because in the last year, they've let go of a couple of very good players. Sloth and Gargona, I don't think that they should have been let go whenever they were let go of. Obviously, you've got Benja going now. Even if you had those 3 players on their own, you add 2 players to that list, and you've got a team that would compete at the highest level as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's overreactions, right? It's if you look at, sorry, I know there was a question coming in, but if you look at Heroic from stage 1 that finished first and went to Charlotte, didn't do well in Charlotte, right? But I don't know what was going on with that 5, with Benja, with Sloth, with Gargona, with Grizzly and Uno, and the team that was there. But they looked broken in Charlotte. And then you look, and I do this so often, and I think people just are so short-sighted and just look in the moment. Take a step back for that Heroic roster. For them to get to Charlotte, considering the age of that team, was incredible. They needed to build upon that. So, then to miss out stage 2 on Berlin, sure, it hurts, but you lost one game, right? Like, it happens. G2 had a miracle run. It happens. So then to just make such drastic change after drastic change, even based on the fact that they then went to Sweden, they've been to 2 majors in the year, qualified to 6 Invitational, make a drastic change right before 6 Invitational that is your best player leaving. I don't know. Like, we don't see the internals, but from the external, it doesn't make a whole deal of sense to me. And I wonder what's going on that they can't fix, that they've let go of 3 really good players on that roster.
Do you think that maybe it's too easy for orgs to make changes and they give up on some players too easily, or they give up on a project too soon?
Yeah, probably. I think, I don't know. Because, Doom going in was not a bad choice for Heroic, right? Mello, you could argue Mello has been done dirty because he comes in, does one stage, doesn't do particularly badly, has a bad major, and then gets dropped. It's like, if you're going to replace very established players, which Sloth and Gorg at that point were, with, 2 unknown factors, you've then got to give them the time to go for it. And that's what, maybe it's not even the Benja one that I'm annoyed about. Maybe it's the Mello one that I'm annoyed about, because you've got to give him the time to, show his worth. You've seen something in him that believed in him. So why would you not show it now, right? But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm not one that is like, oh, teams should stay together and work their way through the problems. No, I think, there are time and places. And if you think you've got it wrong, you got it wrong, you fix it. But like, I don't know. For Heroic, it just seems too knee-jerk reaction-based.
Yeah, I will say this, and I had questions about Jim going to Heroic, but he answered them at that major. I thought Jim played phenomenally at that major, and I think he will have a good career if he can keep working hard there. But
yeah.
Then that kind of leaves us so way too early prediction time, right? I'm going to go for way too early predictions.
Right, yeah.
1, well, this one isn't too early, but who makes it out this weekend in your opinion? And then 2, who do you think the best performing team? Who do you think the best performing team out of each region is going to be?
This weekend, right? Okay, so this weekend, EU close calls. I'm going to do a 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of like my favorites. I think Navia favorites, Secret are second favorites, Makers third, Outsiders fourth. That will be pretty controversial. I don't believe in the style of siege that I saw from Outsiders in 2022. I think the meta has simply surpassed them. They could come out and completely prove me wrong, because they did start showing glimpses of catching up to the meta in stage 3. But I'm just not sure, because, Joystick's been a while out, Shepard's been a while out. It worries me. 6 Invitational, then I think if I was to name probably 6 favorites, I don't think an APAC team's winning it. Sorry, Elevate fans. I don't think Kag or Direwolves are going to do well.
Do they make it out of groups?
Necessarily.
Does an APAC team get out of groups?
Yeah, Elevate probably. So I think Elevate probably make it out of groups. But then I think 2 big teams from each region. I think you've got to be looking at from EU, obviously BDS. BDS and Koi are the 2 from EU that you should be kind of thinking about. I think from LATAM, you're looking at W7M and Liquid. And then from NA, I think realistically, you're looking at Sonics and then M80. I think they're the 6 that if you could make an argument for any of them winning it. And I think any team past that, there will always be some kind of counter argument that thinks, nah, I don't think so, because. So I think those are the 6 that I'd be keeping an eye out to go deep in the tournament. You
didn't give LATAM
groups and brackets.
You didn't give us your 2 from LATAM?
Yeah, I did. W7M and Liquid.
Oh, thank you. Maybe I've gone completely deaf, but I want to see Liquid do well. I think you were there. You were there in Yonchiping, and you saw how it was heartbreaking seeing those guys after that game. And some of them players have sacrificed so much in their careers to get to where they are. So let's kind of get ready to wrap up. First off, one thing that I did when Ian was on was he actually was like, Gibson, I'm going to give you some flyers for stuff you did. I'm going to do the opposite, but for you. I want to give you some flyers fresh, because you spoke about the way some people paid it forward to you at the start of your career. And you've done the same. Obviously, you and Ian had a massive impact on where I am today. Basically, alphabetical order got me into UCAN 2, but that's a story for another day. I basically got told that the reason I got a UCAN 2 gig was my name came first alphabetically.
Nice.
But I met you and Ian in Charlotte for the first time I'd ever met you, but we'd spoken before. And you two gave me the confidence to go ahead and ask for a gig. And that was MPL, and I got that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I worked with you a little bit again on MPL, which was obviously really fun. You worked with Whippet too. And you put our name forward for an S tier event, Gamers 8. And I don't think I would have gotten any of the opportunities I've had if it wasn't for what you've done for me and Whippet. So I want to give you a thanks for that.
No problem. Yeah. Like, you know, I believe, I said this to you privately anyway, I don't mind saying it publicly. It's like, I believed in your duo. I think you've got that kind of chaotic energy that Des and Ace have that people love. And I think, you know, there's a lot that goes with that isn't just, you know, game knowledge or being a good play-by-play, color caster, whatever. You've got that kind of duo energy that, you know, is pretty special. So, you know, I was more than happy to, you know, work with you and put your names forward.
No, look, we appreciate it. And as I said, hopefully we get more opportunities to work together in the future. But stepping away from Siege entirely, the very last topic I want to speak about is, you know, as well as your amazing journey in esports, you've also done a pretty impressive journey yourself. You know, you've been going to the gym a lot. You've really improved. Look, you have improved the way you kind of look and feel over the last year as well. So I want to give your props to that. But how important has like the likes of the gym and streaming and all these things outside of Siege, how important have they been for you over the last year and a half just to kind of decompress?
Yeah, it's been crazy, to be honest. I mean, the gym is it is up and down, right? It's it's one where it's kind of hard. The one thing that I needed to get used to realistically was working out in hotel gyms and places that I'd never worked out before. You know, I've got a gym membership in the UK and a gym membership in Paris, but then also every hotel that we visit as well. And I think, you know, that's obviously very important. I think in this life, you know, you'll have seen it whenever we go out to Paris or whenever we've been at events, is like the food you end up eating is just shit. And it is, because it's quick food. You're there for a completely separate reason. You're not thinking about your nutrition. And then the same with the gym. It's very, very easy to put on pounds whilst you work in this kind of life, you know, living out of a suitcase. So it's something that was important to me. You know, I'm nowhere near where I want to be yet. I'm not great at, actually, to be honest, I'm not great at dealing with the food in the gym and stuff. I'm on my own journey to learn about all that and improve it. But, you know, it has generally been quite good. And then, yeah, streaming. I think you mentioned streaming has been absolutely incredible. I don't know how, but people watch my stream. It's mental.
When are we getting the fresh charming game? Because surely you beat the numbers for that.
Yeah, we're not too far off. You know, I think realistically for streaming, I want to get a little bit more consistent. And I think, you know, I've managed to get myself into a nice niche where genuinely people, if they want to watch co-streams, are genuinely going to mine or Super's channel for the regular stuff. Never mind, you know, obviously majors and SI, whatever, we'll have the whole list of everybody. But for the play-by-play stuff, the play day by play day stuff, people are genuinely going to either mine or Super's channel. So, you know, they're doing really well. But yeah, I think for 2023, I'm looking at consistency in the streaming and, you know, seeing where we get to. I think anybody who's tried streaming before or does stream, I don't know how many people get this. I assume quite a lot, but like, I think there's a lot of anxiety that goes with it because you get very obsessive over your numbers. You get very obsessive about, am I entertaining enough? Do people like me enough? Am I going to get this number? Do I get this sponsorship? I'm very fortunate from that point of view that for me, if I stream, it enhances my job and what I do within the community, and, you know, enhances me as a talent or as a figure or as a person or whatever, right? But I can also just not stream if I want to because it's my second job. So I don't necessarily have to deal with that so much. But for 2023, I really want to get consistently streaming, you know, should I be working EUL, hopefully that's the plan if it all goes right. But if it doesn't, you know, I want to be co-streaming everything I possibly can be, because I think for me, especially for the event, the co-streaming has done so much going into an event where it's like, you know, for example, if I work outside 2023, I co-streamed all of LATAM, all of NA, most of APAC, and I worked at APAC North and EUL. Most teams I've either watched a decent amount of through a co-stream or through work in the event. That going into SI, no team feels kind of alien to talk about. And, you know, you'll know this from a broadcast talent perspective. I went kind of over the top co-streaming in stage 3 and flirted with a little bit of burnout. But if you hadn't, when you get to an event, there's certainly teams where you need other talent who do know about those teams to fill you in and give you those assumptions, because it's not, you know, it's not possible to know 20 teams inside out. It's just not. But I'm actually feeling quite good. If I do work SI23, that I do know a lot of these teams. I won't say inside out, but to a really, really good standard.
No, I think I'm looking forward to it. And your co-streams, what I love about your co-streams is the fact that players and talent, once their game is over, literally go to your co-stream to see what people see what you're saying about them. What did Fresh think? Like, I remember during, was it Challenger League? I think Kaneo lived in your chat.
Yeah. Even TSM on the NA calls last weekend was mental. And I think, that's the one thing, and I will say it, is like the support that I've had in my job, because feedback, let's be fair, in the job that I've got, the feedback from the community and the pros is probably the most important thing. If you're getting a bad reception, regardless of whether you're doing a good job or a bad job, right? If you're getting a good job if you're getting a good reception, then you're good. If you're getting a bad reception, you're bad. It doesn't matter on your actual quality. But the fact that in the streams, when I go through either the game file reviews or the co-streaming, the fact that there's so many pros in, having conversations and talking to my viewers, that, the fact that I can just like pull up a replay of something and I can be like, right, here's my opinion, but let's just say, so Spoit's in the chat a lot, for example. I've just named up Spoit, great. But I can just be like, Spoit, what's your opinion?
Who is it?
What's your opinion? And, it was the same in the SI quals for the NA. It's like the whole of TSM was just in the chat talking to like the viewers whilst we was watching the SSG Mirage game. Is like, for me, that's really special. The fact that people like come into the chat and they're very approachable as well. I think that's one unique thing that I've got going on, is that, the people that come into the chat are always, you can always get a Q&A with a pro in my chat somehow.
Yeah, and I think I agree. Look, I'm the same. Any player that I've spoke to in Siege has been more than happy with giving up their time to talk. So, Fresh, this is the point where I would normally ask if anyone has anything to say to their fans ahead of SI or Last Chance Qualifiers. But for you, I suppose I'll just leave it open. Anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Honestly, I might have made it sound a little bit bleak at times, this journey, but I love talent work. I love the Siege world. I want it to prosper. I think as everybody does. But yeah, thank you to literally everybody that supported me in the journey. The streaming, the talent, none of it goes unnoticed, even if I am bad at like replying to people. But none of it goes unnoticed, and it's genuinely a dream job for me. So thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on, Fresh. And guys, if anyone at home wants to keep up to date with what Fresh is doing, make sure to give him a follow on his Twitter. Fresh on Desk is the Twitch, if I'm not wrong, as well. So make sure to give him a follow there. And hopefully we'll see you on our cameras again very, very soon, Fresh. But thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.